Alright, everybody. I don't feel like I need to give too much of an introduction to the concept of the war happening in Ukraine right now. For a brief summary, Russia invaded. It's not morally justified. It's not legally justified. It's pretty awful. There are a lot of war crimes being committed. They are trying to annex the land of Ukraine because they claim it rightfully belongs to Russia. But it does not rightfully belong to Russia because the people, as well as the government that is currently in place there, do not want Russia to have ownership over that land and for it to be part of Russia. There's obviously a lot more history that goes into it. Ukraine was once part of Russia, actually. And before that, I believe it wasn't part of Russia, but then it was again, and then it wasn't. There's been a lot of, conquering annexation of land going on in, that area of the world for, literally hundreds of years. Thousands, maybe. So, can't really get that much deep into the weeds. But listen. This topic, the idea as to whether or not the USA should provide, well, whether or not NATO in general, just Western nations across the board, should provide lethal aid to Ukraine has become a very hot-button topic within lefty spaces. Now, what lethal aid means is essentially, sending weapons, sometimes it's medicine and stuff, basically weapons, vehicles, and ammunition, things that can be used by the Ukrainian military to defend their country. Now, you may be wondering, why is there not any troops being shipped over? It's because Ukraine is a neutral country, which means while there are many nations sending munitions and other forms of lethal aid to Ukraine, they cannot put their own soldiers on the ground even if they wanted to. It's a whole treaty-based thing. It's bureaucracy stuff, but I mean that's what it says on paper technically. So anyway, whether or not the U.S. should quote-unquote support this war has become a controversial topic among two different sides of the left. You've got the libertarian side of the left. These are people who are less authoritarian, who believe in freedom and, democracy and good stuff, the things we like, the good shit, not the bad shit. And then you've got authoritarian leftists, which we call tankies, which, honestly, it's hard to even call them leftists at all. They're really just red fascists. They're just fascists with a coat of socialist paint. But they still quite effectively fool a lot of people into thinking they're progressive, so you got to engage with them as they say they are. With that said, they argue that the US or any other Western nation helping Ukraine in its defense against Russia is imperialist action. Ignore the fact that what Russia is doing by trying to annex Ukraine's land and make it their own is very blatantly imperialism. I don't know, what... It's very blatantly imperialism. So for that reason, the more libertarian aspect of the left, the part of the left I belong to, is much more sympathetic to Ukraine, and while not in favor of war and outright, conflict in general, I don't like war, I'm not in favor of war, I think war is bad, I also think that just sitting back and allowing an authoritarian fascist nation annex another nation, and, war crime its people, and just sitting back and letting that happen, especially when that war criming nation is actually a decently big threat to our to us, I do think it's maybe worth considering a problem. I think it might be worth considering it a problem. So here's where the discussion basically boils down to. You've got the tankies, the authoritarian lefties, who say that Russia is actually anti-imperialist, and they are only doing this because they have a legal claim. This is all a lie, of course, but it's Russian state propaganda, but this is their argument, that Russia has a legal and moral claim over the land of Ukraine, and that what they are doing right now is a liberation, not an invasion. It's obviously propagandistic and completely ridiculous. We've literally got, footage of the war, and there's no ambiguity around, there's literally been no ambiguity around this from the start. And the people defending Russia have done a lot to move the goalposts to defend their position. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit at this point. I feel you guys have the background needed to understand what I'm talking about here. Next, I want to talk about a YouTuber, okay? A big YouTuber. Hypers in chat, if you watch a big YouTuber by the name of Second Thought, If you do, then chances are lately you've probably felt a little iffy about his political takes. It's very likely that you felt a little meh about his politics as of late, particularly in regards to foreign policy. And there's been a lot of discussion about maybe Second Thought is a tankie. Not really maybe, but yeah, Second Thought is just outright a tankie. And despite that, there's been a lot of defense of Second Thought anyway within this sphere of the left. And I think in large part that's because Second Thought tends to keep his nose clean as far as drama is concerned. And people who consume lefty content don't want to find out the hard truths about big lefty content creators they personally enjoy. I've had this issue a lot where I've warned people about insert lefty content creator, no one believes me, and then I get proven right down the road. It's just one of those things, right? Here's the thing though. Second Thought went a little further than just some iffy takes on foreign policy recently. You see, Second Thought has to straddle a fine line between outright authoritarian, pro-Russia, pro-China, tanky propaganda, and making content that can appeal to the majority of the left and be more ambiguously tanky adjacent. Which is why you rarely hear Second Thought say anything that is overwhelmingly shocking. Here's the thing though, that doesn't change the fact that Second Thought has very bad politics and always has. How do we know this? Well, just one moment, chat. Just a month ago, a small YouTube channel with 1.45 thousand subscribers called CPUSA International Department uploaded a video that right now only has 6,000 views. Most of Second Thought's fan base doesn't know about this, and the vast majority of the online left doesn't know about this. He uploaded a video on he spoke in a video that was uploaded on another channel about his opinion on the Ukraine war. And I've been sent this and asked to respond to it because apparently the things that he says here are insane. Oh my god, I remember Keffels and Dylan Burns going over this. Oh, they went over that? Okay, that's good to know. I'm glad to know that somebody's already gone over this before. I thought I was the only one who knew. Regardless, though, we're going to hop right into it now. Let's start the video. Oh, good. We're going to need a little war footage to start with. We're going to have very emotionally driven arguments here, I imagine, where they're basically just going to try to argue war bad.
In late February of 2022, Russia officially began what it has since called its special military operation in Ukraine. While this event marked a significant escalation in violence between the two countries, it was not where the conflict began. Nearly a decade ago, the United States and European imperialist powers backed a far-right coup in Ukraine that
Right off the bat, claiming the Ukrainian Revolution was a far-right coup. Right off the bat, immediately, and then calls the U.S. and all other European powers imperialist. On top of that, just we're straight guys. I mean it. This is Second Thought going fully mask off. When I say that tankies are fundamentally bad people and capable of having good politics, and no matter how good you think of their beliefs, how positively you think of their beliefs, you've been fooled. You are currently being fooled and made a fool of. I mean it. It's not over-exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. It is a fact that will continue to be proven correct over and over and over again. And the sooner that you believe me about this, the sooner that you will be no longer disappointed by content creators you like turning out to be complete pieces of shit. It's going to get worse, though. So let's continue.
Overthrew the elected government and installed a puppet regime on the border of the US's Cold War rival. At the time, this was seen as a clear provocation by the United States, and an attempt to gain a foothold to launch an eventual proxy war in the region, a reality which has been conveniently swept under the rug in recent years. But even this thinly veiled threat cannot be considered the true beginning of the conflict. We'd have to go all the way back to the illegal dissolution of the Soviet.
So, for those that don't know, the Russian government has what's called Russian state media, okay? They do not have freedom of the press in Russia. What they have is state-sanctioned media. If you say something in your news publication that the state doesn't like, especially about the state or like Putin or something, they have the legal authority, and there's nothing anyone or anything can do about it, to just disappear you. Or just, more likely than anything, just ban you from ever being able, like, just take down your website, fine you, imprison you. There are a variety of things they will do, and it is completely legal, and they have the authority to do so because it, and it makes right? There's no freedom of the press, and because of that, something that the Russian government takes advantage of is the fact that there is still a business in spreading the news, in talking about foreign affairs and what's going on right now, domestically as well. So what the government has done is create guidelines and talking points that they demand that large media institutions need to follow if they want to have the support of the Russian government. This is where things like Russia Today, etc., come from. Your average like Russian state media, propaganda channels and publications. And so what you're going to be hearing here are all going to be Russian state media propaganda points that have all been developed by literal government officials working for the Russian government, whose job it is specifically to come up with talking points that are meant to convince people both in Russia and in the West that everything Russia does is good, everything Putin does is good, and the U.S. is evil and imperialist and bad, and only Putin and Russia and the oligarchy that serve under him are able to know what's best for the country and the world.
Soviet Union to really understand the root of the problem. The undermining and eventual destruction of the original socialist project. The brutal and sadistic economic shock therapy that followed.
What socialism?
And the fragmenting of what had once been a strong...
Sorry, what socialism was going on in the USSR? Excuse me? I'm just curious. Were the workers owning the means of production? Like, overwhelmingly? Because I know that when the USSR was at its most historically famous prior to the Cold War, they were going through an industrial revolution of sorts, more of a forced industrial revolution. The rapid industrialization, I think, was the term for it. I think that's what Stalin called it. There was a lot of factory workers. A lot of farmers were forced to become factory workers in Russia and in Ukraine, what is now Ukraine, but back then it was, you know what I mean. And that caused a massive famine, of course, but did those workers working in those factories own the means of production? Were they democratically, like, deciding, like, their work hours and their managers, and did they have, like, significant amounts of power to unionize if they felt their working conditions and hours weren't good? Did they have the ability to leverage their value as a worker to, like, improve their station? Because as far as I've heard, and I've really looked into it, that was not really a thing going on in the USSR. It was really just socialist in name only. It is also funny how often these, like, theory snobs use communism and socialism interchangeably, when I'm pretty certain, well, Marx did use it interchangeably, so I guess that makes sense. If they're going off of, like, Marx hardcore, which they're not, they're going off of Lenin's writing, or not Lenin's. Yeah, no, they're going off of Lenin's writing. But they love the dick ride Marx anyway, so it would make sense that they would word it that way. That they would use socialism and communism interchangeably like Marx did.
And united people. The moment the Second World War ended, the United States began preparing for conflict with this burgeoning new economic power. The Soviet Union was rightly seen as a shining alternative to capitalism, and was a ray of hope for millions of average people around the world. And so the United States began its long process.
Yeah, tankies are MLs. For those that don't know, tankies are MLs. Marxism-Leninism, which is what ML stands for, is not real. In the same way that, like, a non-fascist, a non-authoritarian fascist isn't real, right? Like, it's a made-up thing, right? It basically what happened was Lenin like built off of Marx's writings with his own opinions, and then Stalin like modified that for his own propaganda. So it's not even Leninist, and it's not even Marxist, it's Stalinist. Like, Marxism, Leninism was developed by Stalin as a way of popularizing and justifying through, like, worker rights logic his rule and the, like, conduct of the Soviet Union.
Of trying to kill this hope, drafting war plans, and even considering a preemptive nuclear strike. This is the context in which we must analyze the Russia-Ukraine conflict. What tends to get lost in mainstream coverage of this war, or any conflict that benefits the imperialist powers, is the human cost of war.
So this is going to be a lot of, like, oh, war is so bad, emotional arguments that you could hear from either, like, a brain-dead, like, anti-war lib who doesn't realize that, like, yes, war bad, but also, like, not fighting also bad sometimes. Yeah, we're going to get mostly, like, emotionally driven arguments here that are going to be like, look how horrible the results of this war have been. And it's like, who's invading who here again? The results of what you're seeing here are the nation you're defending is invading another nation, and you are saying that the bloodshed and carnage is bad, and so your solution is the invaded nation should just give up, and we should stop supporting the invaded nation, and just let them get invaded. It's very clear that this is not, like, a genuine concern for the people who are getting war crimed by the Russians, because if that's what he was concerned about, he wouldn't be making excuses for the Russians. And of course, he's already, like, let slip to, like, everybody who knows what he's trying to do, what his game is, when he said, backed a far-right coup in Ukraine in reference to the Ukrainian Revolution. He's already trying to spout the Ukrainians are far-right, and those that are pro-Ukraine are far-right talking point. This has been a very desperate effort on the part of far-right interest, because as you guys know, Russia literally, like, was proven to have had a part in trying to get Trump elected. Like, literally, Trump's campaign managers, there were people, his lawyers, people on his campaign were literally arrested and went to prison because they were found to have been working with the Russian government and Russian agents to try to get Trump elected because they saw far-right victory in the U.S. as a boon to their personal interests. Russia did. Russia is not this bastion of progressive, like, lefty, socialist, whatever the thought. They're literally trying to get a guy elected here who refers to communism, socialism, and wokeness as, like, the biggest evil there is. How is this guy, the anti-imperialist, like, I mean, and I'm referring to Putin here, how is Putin the anti-imperialist, like, progressive whatever that you're trying to make him out to be? The truth is he's not, and this guy is literally just repeating a script that he's being most likely paid to repeat. It really sucks that, like, if you can find a lefty content creator online and their production quality is super high, there's a good chance they're probably not legit, because where the f does a lefty get that much money from? I'm sorry, guys. There's no money in this shit, okay? If you see a lefty figure that has, like, a ridiculous amount of money, that should immediately be at least suspicious. Not on its own, but, like, you should maybe think about why that would be the case for a moment, because there's rarely, if ever, any money in, like, progressive ideology. There is a lot of money, though, in shilling out for foreign governments, like Russia, during a war. So you're saying Vosh is bad? Vosh is not rich. He's, like, pretty stable and well off, but he's not rich. At least not by the U.S.'s definition of rich, and I'd say most people's definition of rich. Or a rich person's definition of rich.
Those who sign the papers and make the decrees that send entire generations into the meat grinder will never hold a gun themselves. They'll never lose a child to geopolitical jockeying. Their lifestyle won't be affected. They won't lose their homes to shelling.
So this is where he's just going to do the generalized, like, war bad. There's literally no substance to anything he's saying here. The shelling is being done by the Russians to Ukraine. Everything that he says here is in an effort to finalize with the argument, so Ukraine should sit back and allow Russia to take their land, and they should have to become Russian citizens. They should have to become citizens of the nation that shelled them, bombed their families, raped their children, and like, killed and destroyed their homes. That's what he's suggesting. That is the core to the point that he's trying to, the emotional argument he's making.
their pantries will remain stocked, and their water will always be clean. But that is
just
not
like Stalin's
the
during the
reality for
Holodomor,
people
huh?
being sent to fight, and the loved ones they're desperately trying to protect from pointless escalation and random acts of cruelty inspired by the hate and bitterness of war. As with any active conflict, exact numbers are closely guarded by the combatants. But there's no hiding all the footage that makes its way to Telegram, Twitter, and other more democratized online news sources.
So to, like, get out of the way of this guy's, like, hyper-dramatization, like, I'll tell you how fucked up the war is. Like, I literally was on Reddit today, and I follow the r/combat footage subreddit, so that's, like, literally nothing but Ukraine war footage now, because what's going on right now. I saw a picture today of a Russian soldier who'd gotten shot in the head. Definitely by a high-power rifle round, if I were to guess, just based on the guy's fucking head. It literally deflated his head like a balloon. It was like, I had to look at it for a second, like, hold on, enhance? Enhance. I had to, like, enhance the footage of this guy's, like, this Russian guy's exploded head, because I was convinced that wasn't real. It looked like a rubbery doll mask that had, like, I forget how, like, weirdly rubbery human skulls are when they get, like, crushed. Not that I would know prior to that video or anything, but, you know. It's one of those things, you know?
Conservatively, tens of thousands of people have been killed since last year, including civilians, as well as mercenaries flying in from Western countries to hunt their fellow human beings for sport. We've seen horrific footage of homes destroyed.
Oh, you know what he just referred to? Human beings, or people flying across the world to go to Ukraine to hunt fellow human beings for sport. Do you know what he's referring to there? Shorzan? I will literally post the image link in chat if you guys want to see the video of the Russian soldier's deflated fucking head from getting shot. Anyway, though, what he's arguing about, what he's referring to right now are volunteer fighters. So while no government can actually send soldiers or any like private military or anything like that to Ukraine to fight, individual citizens have the right to go to Ukraine and volunteer to fight. That is a thing that, like, individual nations, for the most part, cannot say you're not allowed to do, and that's not a thing that those individual nations have any part in. So what he's referring to right now are volunteer fighters, and calling them, he's calling volunteer fighters, like, people who are going to another country to fight, hunt their fellow human beings for sport. So he's demonizing the volunteer fighters that are helping the Ukrainians right now. I fucking hate these people. Yeah, people like Second Thought are genuinely evil. Like, you gotta understand that, like, quippy, nice, high-quality, and high-production value videos with, like, a smooth voice does not equal valid opinions or even a good person being the person on the other side of the mic. Sometimes you're just dealing with someone who's an evil piece of shit. And Second Thought is one of those people. I mean, he literally had to look over all of this, like, brutal war footage in order to make this video, and yet, like, his argument is that Ukraine is in the wrong. Like, think about that for a moment. He had to find all of this brutal, like, bloody war footage to show for the video, for his, like, sad section of the video here about how bad war is. And yet he still, after seeing all of that, came out of it with the conclusion of Russia is in the right, Ukraine is in the wrong. That is the level of evil that we are dealing with here. The only thing he gives a fuck about in regards to these deaths is how he can use it to make Russia look good somehow and Ukraine look bad somehow.
Bodies burned beyond recognition.
Look how evil Ukraine is for continuing to stand up for itself.
And what looks like evidence of chemical weapons. War is a dirty, bloody business, and it only benefits the ruling class of the involved nations.
Yeah,
the
like
conscripts
Putin.
Shipped off to fight in some leveled city have no chance of elevated status. Their lives won't be improved by butchering.
So here's the big issue with what he's describing here as well. This is a very false equivalence. Something that American tankies take very strong advantage of is the fact that a lot of Americans' understanding of American foreign policy decisions are just oil. And when it comes to oil, there's basically a IQ bell curve with this issue, okay? So on the left side of the IQ bell curve, you've got the lower IQ people. And those are the people who make up the vast majority of the idiots that talk about politics. Who are just like, oh, it's all about oil. It's all about oil. America just cares about oil. And then you've got like the middle ground, which are, you know, people that know oil's a big deal and that's what it's all about. It's not what it's all about, but it's a pretty serious issue. And then you've got the people on the other end of the bell curve who are the highest IQ, but the least amount of the population. And they understand it is actually all about oil. Usually with a lot of American conflict, it comes down to oil and fossil fuels. However, this is one of the very few cases where that's not the situation. And what Second Thought and many tankies are trying to do is take advantage of America's generally anti-America being at conflict with anyone because it's usually for just oil or whatever tendencies, and suggesting something along those lines must be why America is supporting Ukraine in this war. That there's some selfish ulterior motive. And yeah, there probably is a selfish ulterior motive. I would argue that not wanting Russia to be literally touching NATO countries is probably a good example of that. However, that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Like, this war is not one that's being fought for the same reasons as most have been on America's for America in the past, right? This isn't like an attempt to try to like quell a rebellion in a nation that's having like a communist uprising or something like that. This is a fascistic country that we are at odds with right now, invading a country that has every right to exist, and we have reason to actually do the right thing here for once. And for once the stars are aligning and making it so American, not even imperialism, just America's wealth and resources in regards to like weaponry are actually a benefit to innocent people rather than like the end of the world for them. You know, it's like the one time America's fucking massive arsenal and military budget can be put to like a good thing, and these people get upset about it and try to twist it into a bad thing.
Bring their fellow workers. They will be lucky to return home at all, and most of them with scars both physical and mental that will haunt them.
So, he gave the game away with his wording. Notice how he said return home? The Ukrainian soldiers are defending their home. They are home. They are in their home and they are defending it. He's referring to the Russian soldiers who are going to be scarred and they're going to return home. And he's literally trying to drum up sympathy for the Russian soldiers in his video defending the invasion of Ukraine. The only reason these Russian soldiers are dying is because Putin has sent them there. And whenever he says this only serves the ruling class on top, he will never say Putin. He will never say Putin or his oligarchs are the only ones benefiting here. He'll only ever shit on Zelensky. And if he does criticize Putin or his oligarchy in any way, it'll be either to the same degree or more likely much less so than he does Zelensky and the Ukrainian government.
For the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, those at the top talk of democracy, freedom, national determination, and invoke some mythologized past to fool the peasants into thinking they're dying for a noble cause.
Notice how vague he's being.
There must be a peaceful resolution to this conflict. We have seen in recent months that the United States remains the primary obstacle
Ukraine's
to peace
surrendering
in the region. As China attempts to broker a peaceful...
What he means by the U.S. remaining a primary obstacle to peace, he means the U.S. is continuing to provide Ukraine what they need to not lose. What Second Thought is suggesting here by a peaceful resolution is Ukraine just losing and having to surrender. That's the solution he is suggesting here. Implying defending yourself from invasion isn't a noble cause. He's not implying it. He's outright stating it now. Yeah, tankies are literally just red fascists. This is state propaganda. He was paid to make this video. Like, guys, I don't know if you know this, but like 1,000,000% he was paid to make this video. Most likely by a news agency beholden to the Russian government or by Russian government like representatives themselves. More likely a news organization that's like Russian state media that's like funding this video through him. There should be peace, but it shouldn't end with Russia winning and having Ukraine. No. They've subjected the people of Ukraine to like constant war crimes and shit. I don't think that they should have that land. No. I don't think they should be able to just like I think imperialism is also fundamentally wrong as well. So that's also a big part of why I don't think Russia should have that land. Anyway. Hey, Kraut.
Resolution. The U.S. and
Hope
its
you're having a good one,
lackeys
dude.
call ever more loudly for increased weapons shipments and greater Western involvement. Thankfully, this conflict has coincided with the sharpening of contradictions surrounding the U.S. The once untouchable global hegemon is losing its grip.
Yep, see, so how we've gone from, like, literally hollow virtue signaling about how war is bad to now just immediately we've pivoted into, now let's talk about how bad this is for America and how bad America is. It's literally just this is Russian state propaganda. That's what this is. This is Russian, like, Second Thought is Russian state media on par with, like, Russia Today or any of those other shill outlets.
On the rest of the world. Countless Latin American and African countries have broken ties with the US and accepted more mutually beneficial trade agreements with China. Even those countries which the US expect.
For those that don't know, Second Thought is also a big China simp as well, and has done a lot to try to pretend as though what China is doing in Africa isn't imperialism. Same goes for with Russia. Russia is also doing imperialism in Africa, but they'll always find an excuse. No, China's not doing imperialism in Africa. It's just, they're actually helping. They're helping, actually. And they do the same shit with Russia, with, like, the Wagner Group's fucking military operations.
To be loyal, like France, are expressing doubts that the United States is a reliable partner, and are beginning to shift towards the East. What we see as a result is a desperate attempt by the US.
This is a lie, by the way. This is a lie, by the way. The U.S. is the most powerful and influential country in the world. The fact that Second Thought is now going as far as to lie to your face and say the U.S. has been weakened by this in some way is possibly the biggest self-report to anybody who isn't bought into the propaganda that you could possibly imagine. Like, he is truly gone. Like, if you didn't know about this video or you hadn't seen it before, then and you were like a Second Thought fan, I hope that this changes that, because he is, whatever about his content you liked before, whatever you thought he was before, that is truly gone. He is not that guy. I hope Brazil can leave BRICS. All I know about BRICS is that one image of the hot, like, ladies that are supposed to be countries personified. And they got the big titties. It's a pretty good image. I like that one. I'm pretty glad that exists.
And its staunchest allies to weaken its economic adversaries by encouraging proxy wars in Eastern Europe and Asia. So far, China has not taken the bait, and instead has stepped into its role as a key negotiator, recently securing peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, contributing greatly to ending the war in Yemen, and now, with any luck, helping to peacefully resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It has become...
So yeah, just blatant Russian state propaganda. None of this stuff is true, and like, if you fact check literally any of his claims, it is literally in blatant contrast to the actual official truth of these of the situation, the war, and everything. Like, the U.S. has not been made to look weak because of the war in Ukraine. There's, like, literally no justification for that statement whatsoever. This is the most transparent state propaganda I've ever seen. He should genuinely be ashamed of himself, but he won't be. He is a grifter. This is the conduct of a grifter. I am very sorry to the Second Thought fans in chat who are having to learn the hard way, you know?
Increasingly apparent that as the U.S. empire declines, it will become
the U.S.
ever more
empire
violent and
declines.
militaristic. A dangerous situation for the rest of the world.
Reminder, this is literally no different than the thought process peddled by Tim Pool and those other, like, doomsday cultist type conservatives who believe that, like, a civil war is coming and the U.S. government and bureaucracy is bound to collapse, like, any day now. And they've been saying this for, like, decades upon decades, like, centuries now, really. It's literally nothing. This is just, like, the Russian state media has told him, say stuff as an American that makes it sound like America is on the decline. That'll make us look really good, and then gave him a big paycheck to do it.
As the United States remains the only country on Earth to have used nuclear weapons on human beings. And they did it not once, but twice. The Communist
Yeah,
Party of the
we
United
win.
States, and the masses of people both here and around the world, must call unanimously for an end to US involvement not just in Ukraine, but in the South China Sea, in Africa, in Latin America, and everywhere the US war machine has extended its tendrils. We must...
So yeah, basically what the goal of this is to appeal to your average progressive or liberal's sense of disliking American imperialism. And of course, America is overwhelmingly imperialist, and the vast majority of conflicts it gets involved in, it has no business in doing so. But this is a blatant case of lying. This is a case of the bad guy for once doing the good thing, and someone trying to make it look bad anyway, you know?
unequivocally say no to US involvement and no to imperialist war, always. Enough blood has been spilled desperately trying to maintain an economic order that does not serve the
What
people.
economic... So, in what way is this a war to preserve capitalism? He's unironically gotten to the point where he's now arguing that the U.S. is fighting against Russia, or not fighting against Russia, is giving lethal aid to Ukraine to help them protect themselves against Russia, to defend themselves against communism, to defend capitalism. It literally makes no sense. For a guy whose name is Second Thought, he did not think twice before saying that. This guy is, like, genuinely evil. I never thought I would say this, but, like, he is genuinely evil. There was a time when I enjoyed Second Thought content, before he went down, like, the blatantly mask-off tanky route, and I was just having some, like, iffy feelings about him. I did enjoy his content, but, I genuinely think less of him as a person, because of this video. I think he's, like, legitimately bad person. This video has a lot of dislikes, too. It only has 6,000 views, though. The reason why this was uploaded so covertly is because Second Thought knows damn well how blatant and mask-off he's going here. He doesn't even dare to upload his opinions being this open on his main channel, because he still relies on the mainstream, like, online left, thinking he's a, like, very soft boy, submissive, video essayist, you know, bread tube bro. Cornbread tube bro or whatever. So this is just it's manipulation of, like, the general tendencies and beliefs of your average American progressive.
Capitalism and imperialism remain the greatest evils of our time. And if we are to secure a better future for all of us, it must be dismantled.
Must secure a future.
And we can start by demanding a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine.
The funny thing as well is that you can tell by the wording of that secure a future thing that came from, like, state media. Because that's straight up, like, the kind of shit they say in Russian state media for, like, the nationalistic, like, pride. Reminder, by the way, Russia, it is illegal to be gay or trans in Russia, I believe. That is the regime that, Second Thought and other tankies are defending. They will call you homophobic, racist, transphobic, all these things if you're not a tanky, too. They'll use massive amounts of idpol against you because you don't agree with a regime that literally discriminates against those groups of people. That is the level of deranged that these people will operate on. There is no reality. There is no facts. There's no truth that they care about. They are literally just trying to make their favorite government look good. That's really just the long and short of it. Hopefully this opened your eyes to how much of a piece of shit Second Thought is. And not just Second Thought, but all MLs and tankies across the board. They're just not good people. Really, they're just not.